So last year during the election with Donald Trump and Kamala Harris, something amazing and incredible, and I think is a seismic shift in the landscape occurred. It really boiled down to something that Elon Musk said shortly before I think the election went through. He said, "You are the media now." And what he meant by that was, when you look at this election cycle, what happened was Donald Trump, in a very real way, won this election off the back of podcasting, off the back of his own personal media machine on Twitter and other social media platforms. If you look at the legacy media, the newspapers, the big corporate news channels, they were all very against Trump for the most part, with very, very few exceptions. And yet, despite that, despite this overwhelming narrative from the legacy media, he still won in a demonstrative fashion. And it's because, as Elon Musk said, you are the media now. Something's changed where it's no longer in the hands of big multi-billion-dollar corporations to disseminate the news, to build brands, to build awareness for topics or for businesses, for issues that matter to you. It's now in your hands because through YouTube, through Twitter, through LinkedIn, through Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, you have the ability to create content that gets distributed at scale to billions of people. And that is a tremendous amount of power that you have. And the entrepreneurs, the businesses that will thrive moving forward, especially as we go into an AI-dominated ecosystem, the people that are going to win are the ones that build a personal media machine. And I'm not just saying personal brand. I'm saying that I'm not using that word for a specific reason, which is that personal brand is just the tip of the iceberg. It's the part that sits above the water that everybody can see. It's your reputation. But the bigger question is everything that's below the surface. And the bigger the bulk of iceberg below the surface, the higher the peak is ultimately going to be, higher your personal brand. And so the goal for me isn't to build the personal brand. It isn't to worry about the peak of the iceberg. It's to build out everything underneath of it, the mass upon which that brand gets elevated. Now, I was in Antarctica 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, and I learned a lot about icebergs, surprisingly. You wouldn't think that there's a lot to learn there. But the interesting thing is that of the icebergs, when you see them above the water, you only see 20%. There's actually a formula for it. It's not 20%, it's like 32% or something like that. And there's a scientific formula for it because the like 30% is above the water, the 70% is below the water. And that just has to do with the weight, the mass, the buoyancy of these icebergs. As soon as a piece of the iceberg breaks off on the top and it goes below that percentage, the iceberg flips. It's a really crazy thing because all of a sudden this mass of ice that you didn't even know was below the water, because you saw this iceberg and it might be big, but if that's only 30% of what's actually under the water, it's freaking crazy when the thing flips upside down. Anyways, all that to say, what you should be focused on going into this new era is building your own personal media machine. And I want to talk about what are the skills that you need to be developing and stacking upon themselves so that you can build your personal media empire. And for me, like, this is personally very important because I made this decision back in 2019, 2020. I had just, exited the day-to-day operations of Escape Climbing, and I was getting into this new business with Invictus Capital. And at that point, I was like, you know what? Every time I exit one of these businesses, I really don't have any leverage because I built the business to be front-facing. Nobody knew me behind the scenes. Now, interestingly, I had built a media machine for the business Escape Climbing and for all the businesses that I had been part of before that. The secret was to build the ecosystem where that company had its own megaphone to put out into the world, and the business grew as a result. And so then I decided, okay, I need to take that and I needed to bolt it onto me, and that became the personal brand of Anthony Vicino. But the power of this is that it has allowed me then to scale other businesses very, very quickly, because fame is the highest form of leverage. Because the more people that know you, the more people that can do business with you. At the end of the day, like, it's not about what you know, it's not about who you know, it's about who knows you. And if they know that you have the solution to their problem, you're going to be able to serve them. So let's talk about these skills from the top. The first skill is communication. The most important skill for building your own personal media empire is the skill of communication, which I break down into, there's many different subcomponents of communication, but the three I really want to talk about here is speaking, writing, and storytelling. So speaking is the ability to take your thoughts and articulate them in a compelling way, whether you're on a stage or you're sitting one-to-one or you're sitting one-to-many, right? Or you're training your team. The ability to speak coherently and string together a thought is critical. The second thing that kind of bleeds into this in a surprising way is writing. Writing makes you a better speaker because the process of writing is it's slow, it's cumbersome, it's an excruciating process of like taking your thoughts and just, squeezing them out onto the page. It's very difficult process for most people. But that act of getting clear about what you think on the written word then translates to your ability to verbally communicate it later. And so there is like this link where doing the one will make you better at the other. Now, the other side of communicating through the act of writing is many of the platforms that you're going to be creating media for your empire will be word-based, right? So that's LinkedIn posts, Facebook posts, that could be Twitter, right? You're going to be writing words on a page. And I believe that the pen is mightier than the sword because the pen can communicate ideas that can transform the world at scale. That is the most powerful. So when I'm sitting down with somebody, I'm like, you want to build your media machine, it starts by becoming a writer, like really learning how to speak through the written word. The third part of communication then is storytelling. And this is really understanding the structure of how we communicate ideas in a way that's sticky and that is influential, that actually changes people's behavior. And it's not enough just to speak eloquent words or to write beautiful words on the page. If you can't write them in a way that people remember, that impacts them on an emotional level, then it's not going to have any long-lasting impact. So you have to learn how to speak, how to write, and how to tell stories. That's the first skill. The next skill, which ties right into this, is the skill of influence. The great media influences people's behavior. It's not enough just to sit passively and consume the flashing lights on the screen. You have to be communicating ideas in a way that actually impacts people to do something. That's why I think psychology, marketing, and sales are the three master skills that you should learn. And psychology is the one that kind of sits on top of both marketing and sales. The way I think about this is psychology is the study of human behavior. Marketing is the use or the knowledge of human behavior to drive behavior, drive a particular behavior. Psychology is just knowing why people do things or understanding the biases that they might have. Marketing is how do I take that information to direct people to do a thing. Now, if you direct them towards something that is not in their best interests, we call that manipulation. Don't want that. Now, if we do it to move them towards something that's in their best interest, we call that influence. Huzzah! We want to be influential. We don't want to be manipulative. The last side of this then is once you understand psychology and you understand marketing, which is human psychology at scale, now we have to understand sales, which is moving an individual to take action. You get those three things figured out, you're never going to struggle. All right. The next thing I want to talk about when it comes to building your media machine here is platform mastery. You have to understand the three fundamental platforms. And this isn't just you need to go master Twitter, you need to go master Instagram. I'm not talking about that. Those are subsets. What you need to do is understand the high-level governing concept, which is temporary content, evergreen content, and owned media. And so temporary content is the type of content that you're going to put out that only lives for 24 to 48 hours. It's algorithm dependent. So content on LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, doesn't matter if you have the best reel in the world, it's going to be gone in the next 28 hours, right? And so this content is valuable for raising awareness. It's getting people to put eyeballs onto what you're doing. But then you need to understand, how do I take that temporary content that's raised awareness for what I'm doing and then drive that traffic towards my evergreen content? Your evergreen content are things that are not necessarily algorithm dependent. That's going to be podcasts. That's going to be books. That could be YouTube videos. It could be an SEO blog article, right? These are things that you create one time and people can find them into perpetuity. You could make a great banger YouTube video and then 2 years from now it goes viral. It happens all the time. And so this part of the ecosystem is valuable because it builds consideration. The temporary content makes people aware that you exist. It gets eyeballs on you. But the evergreen content is what allows people to go deeper with you and to create an affinity for you and say, I know, like, and trust this person, which then gets them to move to the next part of the ecosystem, which is your owned media. Because here's the reality is that regardless of which platform we're talking about, you don't actually own your audience. On YouTube, on Twitter, on Instagram, if the platform decides tomorrow to shut you down and ban you and shadow ban you, kick you off the platform, you're gone, right? And so is your entire audience. So you need to have a way that you can transform and convert the temporary content that creates awareness and the evergreen content, which builds consideration. You need to have a way to drive that towards media you own. And that gives you then the permission to reach back out to these individuals in the future when you have something that could serve them. That's where the email list comes into play. So now the last skill that you need to develop if you want to build your personal media empire is technical competence. And by that, I mean you need to understand all the different ways that media can be communicated to another human being. That's video, that's sound, that's the written word. You need to understand design. You need to understand formatting. Because in a lot of ways, like design and the formatting of words on a page, it's like the body language of good writing or of good visual communication. But you need to understand this. And I don't think it's enough for you just to hire this out, especially in the beginning as you're starting to lay the seeds of your empire. It's very easy to say, I'm just going to go hire that videographer, have them come in and do all the work for me. But you need to understand the principles. What makes for a good video? What makes for good lighting, let's say, or good sound design? What makes for a good microphone? And how can we set up, different recording situations, whether that's a camera over here at 45 degrees or doing it straight on and having a key light over here, right? You need to understand that stuff because in the beginning, you're probably going to be the one that has to do it. But this is important because regardless of how you grow and you scale, at some point, maybe you bring in a team and they're doing all this stuff for you. You still need to understand what makes for good media. Otherwise, you cannot make good media. It's just that simple. That doesn't mean you have to become a master of it, but you need to learn it competently enough so that when you do bring on that team to do everything else for you, all you have to do is sit down, be the talent, and talk to the camera or write your words on the page, and everything will go great, right? But if you do these things, if you learn these skills and you start laying the foundation for your media empire, you're going to be in a much better place over the next 5 years as a business owner than you are without that. Now, I'm not saying that you should just go build a media empire for the sake of building a media empire. If you already have a business, you want to think about how can I bolt this on to what I'm currently doing? And that is going to be the number one thing that you can do to guard against shadow banning, algorithmic changes, platforms coming and going in the night, or your dependency on ads. Ads are great for getting short-term boosts of eyeballs on what you're doing and driving revenue in the short term, but there is no higher ROI than that which comes from brand. And at the end of the day, that brand is sitting at the very top of that iceberg. And so this is the skills, these communication influence, platform mastery, and technical competence. You master these things and your iceberg is going to be nice and chunky, and your personal brand is going to be nice and high in the sky. That's going to be awesome. It's going to make you a lot of money. So if you want help with this, shoot me a DM. Just shoot me the word media, and I will lay out the exact blueprint that you can follow to start building out your own personal media machine. And if that sounds cool to you, do it. If it doesn't, don't. No skin off my nose. Now, that's it. Yeah, that's it. That's all I got for you guys. I'll see you in the next episode.